Hey guys, tonight we're slipping between the rough, scratchy sheets of a medieval bed, if you can even call it that. Picture yourself in a cold, smoky room, the only light coming from a flickering fire and a single beeswax candle guttering in the corner. Outside, wolves howl beyond the thatched walls, and the wind whistles through cracks in the timber. Inside, your mattress smells faintly of damp straw and old sweat. The blanket is wool coarse and itchy. You pull it up anyway. It's better than freezing. And here's the fun part. You probably won't survive this. Not because of the wolves, but because your bed is crawling with lice. The floor beneath is riddled with fleas, and if the smoke doesn't choke you, the draft might. Or worse, the fire might catch your bedding in the night. But hey, at least it's your bed. And tonight, we're going to find out exactly what that means. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your location and local time. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're in a modest cottage, maybe in 13th century England, with walls made of wattle and daub mud and straw slapped onto a wooden frame. The bed is in the main room because there is only one room. If you're lucky, you've got a straw-stuffed mattress resting on a wooden frame. If you're not, you're sleeping directly on a pile of hay with a rolled-up cloak for a pillow. But here's something curious. Even the poorest peasants made an effort to define a bed space. Maybe it's raised slightly off the dirt floor, using a few wooden boards. Or maybe it's nestled into the corner where two walls meet, shielded from the wind and curious eyes. Privacy is a luxury, but even a thin wool curtain might help you feel like this is your own little sanctuary. The mattress isn't a mattress like you'd imagine today. It's called a pallet. And it's basically a sack, often linen, filled with whatever was available. Straw was common, but so were leaves, heather, or even bracken, a kind of fern. You'd fluff it up at night with a stick or your hands trying to make it feel even across the surface. And after a few nights, that soft rustle of straw turns into a loud crunch, especially if mice have moved in. Your bedding is minimal. A single, coarse, woolen blanket, maybe a second, if you're lucky. No fitted sheets, no pillows in the modern sense. Just folded cloth, or if you've got status, a small, down-filled cushion. But for now, your neck rests on something lumpy and uneven. You adjust. It's always about adjusting. Now let's talk about the bed frame. Wood, of course. Elm or oak, if you can get it. But most likely it's roughly hewn pine. Nails are expensive, so the joints are fitted by hand, mortise and tenon pegged together with wooden dowels. If you're extra lucky, there's a rope lattice underneath your mattress, literally a crisscross of hemp ropes woven tight. Every few nights you tighten them with a tool called a bed key, hence the old saying, sleep tight. But don't romanticize it yet. Those ropes sag. That straw gets moldy, bugs crawl in. And if it rains too hard, the damp creeps through the walls and straight into your bedding. By now your feet are numb, and you're curled in a fetal position trying to conserve warmth. There's no central heating. The fire in the hearth is long since ashes, and the cold is biting. Sometimes to fight it, entire families sleep in the same bed. Parents, children, even livestock if the weather is cruel. The warmth of another body is the best insulation you've got. And yet for all this, there's something safe about it. Something timeless. You're wrapped in the smells of smoke and wool, the scratchy weight of your blanket pressing you into sleep. You can hear the rhythmic breathing of others nearby. Maybe someone snores. Maybe someone whispers a prayer. But you're there. You made it through another day. And now you sleep. As your eyes drift closed, you wonder what was a bed like for the rich. Did they have real mattresses? Were they soft, clean, comfortable? Don't worry, we'll get to that. But for now, stay curled up in your corner of the medieval world. There's still more to see. Morning doesn't arrive with the soft chirp of birds. It comes with the jarring crow of a rooster just outside the cottage wall and the low clatter of someone stirring the fire back to life. You groggily peel open your eyes, and the haze of sleep gives way to the cold air that's already gnawing at your cheeks. Your joints are stiff from the straw-stuffed pallet beneath you, and the wool blanket has half fallen to the floor sometime in the night. You pull it back, rubbing your hands together for warmth. As your breath clouds in the chilly morning light, you look around and begin to study your surroundings more closely. The medieval bed. Your bed isn't just a place to sleep. It's also a seat, a table, a place to cradle babies, and sometimes even the sick and dying. It's multifunctional, like every piece of furniture in a world where resources are limited and every item has to justify its presence. Let's rewind time a bit and pan the camera toward a slightly wealthier home. Maybe a merchant's house in a bustling town. The bed there. It's in a separate chamber, yes, a whole room just for sleeping. A luxury in itself. You step in and see it 4 stout wooden posts, carved but not too fancy. A canopy overhead and heavy curtains hanging down the sides. Why not just for beauty? Those thick drapes are essential. They keep in warmth, block out drafts, and perhaps most importantly, grant privacy. You run your hand along the fabric. It's wool or linen dyed in deep colors if the family can afford it. Green, maybe. Or a warm rust red. And the mattress. Not a humble sack of straw anymore. It's thicker, firmer, and stuffed with wool feathers or a blend of materials layered for comfort. It's still bumpy and uneven by modern standards, but by medieval ones, it might as well be a cloud. Lie down for a moment. You'll feel the ropes beneath the mattress, giving just enough to cradle your weight, supported by a tighter weave than the peasant version. The bed is higher, too tall enough that you might need a stool to climb in. That's intentional. It keeps you away from the cold drafts that slither across the stone floor and helps you feel elevated literally and socially. At the foot of the bed, there might be a trunk. It's not just for decoration. This is where your bed linens, extra blankets, or nightwear might be kept. And if you're fortunate, a warming pan might be used before sleep, coals placed inside a metal pan, slid between the sheets to banish the chill. The sheets themselves are linen, sometimes scented with dried lavender or rosemary to ward off lice and make things feel fresher. Beds in this context become more than places to sleep. They are symbols. The higher your social class, the more elaborate your bed becomes. In noble households, beds were among the most expensive items one could own. Heirlooms passed down through generations, carved with coats of arms or family insignias. In fact, the medieval bed was often the centerpiece of ceremonial life. Marriages were consummated, their children born, last breaths taken. A will might even detail who inherits which bed, and you'd be surprised how many people specified it. It wasn't vanity, it was value. A bed might represent half your movable wealth, and the symbolism doesn't stop there. In illuminated manuscripts and medieval artwork, beds often appear as the backdrop to crucial life moments. You'll see saints reclining on deathbeds or kings sitting upright with courtiers at their side. The bed is a place of vulnerability, but also power. To own one, to be seen in one, was to affirm your place in the world. But let's slide back again out of the merchant's chamber and back into your simpler space. You miss the curtains now, don't you? The warmth, the privacy, the lack of straw poking you in the side. Your reality is rougher. You sleep with your clothes on. You share space with others. And if you're young, You might not even have a bed to yourself. Children commonly sleep several to a mattress or the floor, curled together like kittens. Yet even among peasants, there's variation. In some households, the adults get the one true bed, while children sleep in trundles or on makeshift pallets pulled out at night and pushed aside during the day. In wealthier peasant homes, a second bed might be reserved for guests or grandparents. You can almost hear the rhythm of daily life rising around you, the scrape of wooden bowls being set for porridge, the soft thump of feet crossing the packed dirt floor, the metallic clink of a poker rearranging coals. And still, your mind lingers on that merchant's bed. Was it really so soft? Did it truly smell of herbs and warmth and comfort? Tonight, maybe you'll imagine that's your bed. Maybe as the wind howls and the thatch creaks, you'll picture yourself drawing heavy curtains closed around you, blocking out the world. Maybe you'll feel the gentle give of wool and feathers beneath you, and the faint scent of lavender tickling your nose. It's okay to pretend, because no matter where you lay your head in the Middle Ages on straw or silk, the bed was always more than a place to sleep. It was a boundary between the world's chaos and your own quiet survival. And for the next little while, we'll keep exploring it, one layer, one lumpy cushion, one creaky rope at a time. The morning wears on, and with it comes the endless churn of medieval routine, hauling water, tending fires, mucking out livestock. Your limbs ache. Your eyes are still heavy from a night of tossing and turning on that uneven pallet. But even as your day begins, you can't help returning to thoughts of the bed. It wasn't just where you slept, it was where you existed after dark. And now, as evening approaches again, and the light begins to dim, you're already thinking about slipping back into that space. Tonight, let's climb higher up the social ladder past the merchant class and into the private chambers of nobility. The contrast is striking. You step into a castle or a manor house and everything changes. The bed here is more than furniture. It's a stage, an architectural focal point. You can almost hear the rustle of heavy tapestries as you approach it, the muffled sounds of servants tending to the linens, the creak of polished wood underfoot. This is a four-poster bed in all its medieval splendor. The posts rise tall and ornate, carved with vines, lions, or religious motifs. Above you is a canopy known as the tester, often draped with layers of embroidered cloth or woven wool. Curtains cascade down each side, not just to warm the sleeper, but to provide privacy, dignity, and status. The bed itself is massive, wide enough for 2, 3, or more if needed. You might even find a servant curled at the foot, sleeping near, in case they're called upon. And the mattress, it's a complicated stack of layered comfort, a base filled with straw or rushes for support, followed by 1 or 2 feather beds, and topped with a bolster for your head. Each layer is encased in fine linen washed and aired with obsessive regularity by medieval standards at least. Now imagine yourself lying back against that bolster. The fabric is cool and crisp. The weight of the bedding is significant blankets made of wool or fur, or even imported textiles like silk if you're exceptionally wealthy. And unlike the scratchy woolen wrap from your peasant days, this bed holds warmth like a cocoon wrapping around you with a kind of sleepy gravity. But it's not just about comfort. This bed is political, symbolic, ceremonial. When nobles traveled, they often brought their beds with them, or at least the key parts. The frame might remain behind, but the mattress, the bedding, the curtains, and personal items like embroidered cushions or relics followed. The reason you weren't truly settled until your bed was installed. This mattered so much that by the late Middle Ages, wealthy nobles even had state beds, ornate, almost throne-like beds, used specifically for public appearances. Imagine being watched as you sat in bed receiving guests, settling legal disputes, or dictating letters. It might seem absurd now, but in a time when personal space was rare, the bed was the most sovereign space you had. Rulers gave out blessings from their beds. Queens received ambassadors. Kings died in them, surrounded by court. The materials were stunning. Silk, velvet, cloth of gold. Pillows embroidered with family crests. Bolsters stuffed with goose feathers. Coverlets edged with fur. All of it designed to impress as much as it comforted. The bedchamber became a blend of private retreat and semi-public theater, a place where power, intimacy, and ritual converged. And yet even the grandest bed had its limitations. For all their beauty, medieval beds were still vulnerable to the same threats: fleas, lice, mold, and rot. The rich might beat their mattresses daily with sticks or air their bedding on sunny days, but infestations were part of life. People wore nightcaps and long sleeping gowns not just for modesty, but to keep their hair and skin protected. Sometimes special herbs were tucked into the bedding. Lavender, sage, wormwood, and rosemary were believed to drive away pests and evil spirits alike. Your nose fills with the faint, dusty sweetness of dried flowers as you imagine curling up under those luxurious layers. Let's not forget the furniture surrounding the bed. A chest at the foot for linens and clothing. A washstand nearby with a basin and pitcher of water. Though bathing was infrequent, it was still part of nightly rituals among the noble class. Maybe there's a cushioned stool, a carved bench, or even a small writing desk near the wall. Candlelight flickers off polished surfaces. The shadows dance on the drapes. The mood is soft, hushed, and heavy with centuries of routine. As you lie in that noble bed, there's a strange comfort in its permanence. Unlike the peasant's straw pallet thrown together each night and reshuffled by morning, this bed is fixed, solid, and enduring. It has a name in the estate's records. It might be referenced in a will. It might survive generations, its linens changed, its mattress restuffed, but its frame remaining. And so, whether you're lying beneath a coarse wool blanket or nestled in layers of brocade and feathers, the rhythm is the same. Day's end leads to darkness. Darkness leads to rest. The cold creeps in, the wind scratches the shutters, and still you return to this singular act, crawling into bed, pulling the covers over your shoulders and surrendering, if only for a few hours, to the fragile safety of sleep. You're not just learning what a medieval bed looked like tonight. You're living at each texture, each sound, each sigh of worn timber as it settles beneath you. And there's more to come. Tomorrow night you'll explore how couples shared these beds, how children were raised in them, and how birth and death both arrived beneath the same draped canopy. But for now, just close your eyes and imagine the bedchamber quieting one candle at a time. The candlelight is down to a low flicker now, casting long shadows against the wooden beams of the chamber ceiling. You're lying still, your head pressed against the feather-filled bolster, listening to the quiet crackle of the hearth as it burns low for the night. The medieval bed is not just a resting place anymore. It's becoming a whole world unto itself. And as you breathe in the musty softness of aged linen and old wood, you start to notice something new. You're not alone. Beds in the medieval world were rarely private. You share it sometimes willingly, sometimes not. Maybe your spouse lies next to you, their body curled to preserve warmth, their breath slow and even in the dark. But it might just as well be a child, a cousin, a servant, or even a guest. Privacy is a concept reserved for the wealthy, and even then it's limited. Let's begin with married couples. In a noble home, marriage meant much more than companionship. It was contract alliance duty. The bed was where heirs were made. Sometimes the wedding ceremony itself would end, with the public procession to the bridal bed, complete with curious onlookers, laughter, and toasts. In royal weddings, it wasn't uncommon for the couple's first night to be partially observed, yes, observed, as proof of consummation. The curtains were drawn eventually, of course, but not always as early as you'd hope. And yet once the door shut and the chamber quieted, couples did carve out something human in this space. Whispered conversations, small touches beneath fur blankets, shared laughter. The bed, stiff and formal by day, softened at night. Even among nobility, there was affection to be found beneath the canopy. If you were poorer, the dynamic changed, but not the closeness. Entire families often shared a single bed. Picture it, parents in the middle, children arranged around them by age or need. The youngest swaddled and tucked against the mother. The older ones huddled at the foot or crammed in along the sides. It was a tangle of limbs, blankets, and nighttime murmurs. This wasn't just about necessity, it was also protection. Winter nights could be brutal. Huddling together meant survival. Body heat was the only insulation you had. The straw mattress offered some cushion, but the real warmth came from each other. You hear a child stir in their sleep, a foot kick out under the blanket, a whispered shh from someone already half asleep. It's chaotic, yes, but strangely intimate. Even guests weren't spared the shared sleeping experience. Hospitality in the Middle Ages was a moral and sometimes religious duty. Travelers, relatives, or pilgrims might be offered a spot in the family bed. In an inn, you'd often rent the bed by the space, not by the room. Strangers could and did sleep side by side, shoulder to shoulder. It was expected. If you protested, people might see you as haughty or ungrateful. To cope, people developed elaborate sleeping customs. You turned away from your bedfellow. You kept your hands to yourself. You mumbled prayers or psalms until sleep came. If someone was restless, you tolerated it. If they snored, you nudged them discreetly. This was not luxury, it was endurance. And yet again, you'll find strange beauty in the togetherness. There's a quiet solidarity in the medieval bed, a reminder that survival was always communal, that the night with its chill and its long hours was best faced with others beside you. Let's linger on one more figure in the bed tonight, the infant. Babies slept with their mothers, often tucked into the crook of an arm or wrapped in swaddling cloth beside the parents. There were no cribs as we know them. A wooden cradle might be used, rocked gently by a foot from the bed, but more often than not, the baby slept with you. This was as much necessity as tradition. Night feedings weren't an interruption. They were the rhythm of maternal life. But it was risky. Accidental smothering was not uncommon, especially in overcrowded beds. Some midwives and church officials warned against co-sleeping. Others saw it as natural, even sacred. You picture yourself now lying in a medieval bed curled around a sleeping child, or with the soft weight of a baby's breath near your face. You feel the cramped space, the ache in your side, the warmth along your spine. Someone coughs nearby. A hand brushes yours in the dark. The walls seem to press in tighter, and yet you are safe. Or at least as safe as you can be. Above your head, the canopy billows faintly in a draft. The wooden posts creak slightly as someone shifts. The fire dies down completely now, leaving only its glowing embers. And still, the bed holds you. Not just your body, but your family, your traditions, your future. This space is alive with generations of breath and dreams. Babies were born here, secrets whispered, illnesses battled, husbands reconciled, wives wept. You've begun to understand the medieval bed was a crucible of human experience, Not just a rectangle of wood and cloth, but the quiet core of daily life. So tonight, as you settle back into the woven ropes and scratchy linens of your imagined sleeping place, you let your body mold itself into the familiar hollow left in the mattress. Someone shifts beside you. Maybe they're real. Maybe they're imagined. But it doesn't matter. You're not alone in this world. You never were. The darkness feels thicker now, wrapped around you like another layer of wool. You lie still, listening to the deep breathing of others, nearby the occasional rustle of straw beneath restless limbs. In the medieval night, dreams and fears take shape together. The bed isn't just a place of rest, it's a vulnerable frontier shower between the known and unknown, between waking and whatever lies beyond. And you're right there, nestled in it, caught in the space where breath turns soft and the world falls quiet. But this medieval bed isn't always a peaceful sanctuary. Sometimes it's the backdrop for life's most unsettling moments. Illness, for example, often begins and ends here. With no hospitals for the common folk, no real doctors outside the cities, the bed is where you fight fevers, sweat through chills, and whisper prayers into your mattress. You can smell the vinegar-soaked cloths laid across foreheads, feel the slight dampness from someone wiping your brow, hear the murmurs of loved ones sitting close, just out of sight behind the curtain. Disease spreads fast in these tight quarters. One child gets a cough, and within days the whole family might be huddled under those same wool blankets, trembling together in the grip of a mysterious illness. You might think of the Black Death, but even before that winter, fevers, dysentery, and sweating sickness haunted the medieval bedroom. The bed becomes a battleground, and survival a coin toss. Sometimes a priest comes. He stands at the edge of the bed, muttering Latin prayers, sprinkling holy water on your blankets. If you're very sick, you receive the last rites right there: confession, communion, anointing. The scent of oil and incense mingles with sweat and wool. Eyes glisten with fear or acceptance. This isn't just a bed anymore. It's a deathbed. But don't let it frighten you yet. Life happens here too. Consider childbirth. In the medieval world, most women gave birth in the home, often right in the marital bed. The chamber would be sealed off, windows closed, fires stoked, all light shut out to protect the newborn from harmful spirits. Midwives and female relatives gathered around, forming a circle of warmth and care. You lie there now, clutching a wooden rod, sweating and straining your breath short and sharp. The mattress shifts beneath you with every contraction. Then, after hours of labor blood, whispered encouragement, and pain, a baby's first cry pierces the darkness. Someone lifts the child, still slick with birth, and wraps it in linen. It's placed beside you, and just like that, your bed has transformed again. A sacred space, a birthplace. This cycle, birth, sickness, death, played out again and again in the same space. The bed was constant, and because of that, it absorbed more than weight. It absorbed meaning. But let's shift focus now. What about dreams? You might not realize how seriously dreams were taken in medieval times. In the quiet of night, after the embers die down, and the rhythmic sound of sleeping surrounds you, dreams were believed to carry messages from God, warnings from the dead, even glimpses into the future. What you saw in your sleep could be as meaningful as what happened by day. In some noble households, dream interpreters, priests, scribes, even astrologers were consulted. A strange vision in your bed might end up recorded in a family chronicle. In peasant homes, dreams were shared over breakfast, dissected in low whispers. Did you dream of a white horse? It could mean travel, a snake, danger, a falling tooth, illness or death in the family. You turn now, the mattress creaking under your weight. The straw rustles. Your eyes are closed, but your mind is wide awake, chasing symbols in the dark. Maybe you dream of flying over a field of wheat. Maybe you're drowning in a cold river. Maybe you see the Virgin Mary standing at the foot of your bed. Whatever you see, you'll remember it come morning. And the dreams aren't just your own. Your spouse, your child, your cousins sleeping beside you. They dream too. You're all together in this liminal world, experiencing your own private visions under a shared roof, a shared blanket, a shared sky. Even nightmares find their way into the bed. Medieval folk believed demons could visit sleepers at night. The incubus or succubus might press down on your chest, leaving you breathless and terrified. Today we call it sleep paralysis. Back then it was a sign that something unholy had entered the chamber. To guard against these threats, people left protective charms near the bed, crosses made of twigs, small pouches of salt or sacred relics sewn into pillows. Some carved prayers into the headboard. Others recited psalms before sleep. You might whisper one now, just to be safe. But even with the fear, you rest. You trust in the bed, in its presence, in its power. It creaks, yes. It shifts, yes. But it holds you, like it held the sick, the birthing, the dreaming, and the dying. It will hold you too. The wind picks up outside, pressing against the shutters. A dog barks faintly in the distance. Someone nearby coughs and then turns over. The ropes beneath you tighten slightly with the motion. And you tucked into your shared blanket, warmed by another's back, protected by the heavy drapes. Feel sleep pulling you under once more. Tomorrow we'll visit the bed in other corners of society, monasteries, nunneries, taverns, inns. But for now, you're still here, wrapped in wool dreams and something very old. The dawn peeks through the narrow cracks in the shutters, casting thin beams of light across the worn floorboards. You stir gently, eyes still closed, body sore in familiar ways. The medieval bed doesn't offer relief in the way you might hope, but it does offer continuity. A place to return to night after night. As you stretch beneath the coarse woolen blanket, your thoughts drift toward how others outside your home, outside even your class, might experience sleep in this era. Because beds, as it turns out, were as diverse as the people who used them. This morning, let's step beyond the cottage, beyond the noble chamber. Let's walk through the cold stone halls of a monastery. The smell of incense lingers in the air, along with that unmistakable chill that never quite lifts, even in summer. You're now a monk, cloaked in simple robes, your life governed by bells and silence. And when night falls, you sleep not in a plush, feather-stuffed bed, but in a shared dormitory known as the dormitorium. Here, dozens of brothers sleep side by side in orderly rows. There are no curtains, no cushions, no warmth from a family member's arm. Just a row of identical wooden frames spaced evenly beneath high vaulted ceilings. Your bed is a plank covered with a straw mattress, or perhaps nothing more than a simple cloth pad. A single blanket covers you. Your pillow, if you're allowed one, is modest and flat. Silence is the rule. Talking after Compline. The final prayer of the day is strictly forbidden. You climb into your narrow bed in silence, lie flat on your back, and try to quiet your thoughts. You're not meant to curl up for comfort. Sleep itself is considered a concession, a necessary evil for the body, not a reward. Some orders even forbade sleeping on one side, believing it encouraged lustful dreams. It's a strange contrast, isn't it? While noblemen fall asleep beneath embroidered canopies surrounded by warm furs and scented herbs, monks sleep in rigid simplicity. And yet their beds carry just as much meaning, perhaps more. This is where you battle temptation, confront your weakness, seek clarity in dreams. The bed becomes a testing ground for the soul. You wake before the sun roused by the bell. No groaning, no lingering. You fold your blanket rise without a word and shuffle off to prayer. The bed waits unchanged for the next night's vigil. Now let's pass through another door, one heavy with the scent of unwashed bodies, spilled ale, and wood smoke. You're in a tavern or an inn, maybe in York or Prague, or somewhere on a muddy road between market towns. Travelers fill the space with noise and stories. And upstairs, in the sleeping quarters, you find another world of beds. Except, they aren't really beds as you know them. They're platforms, cots, straw piles, and benches. You don't rent a room, you rent space. One half of a bed if you can afford it. If not, a place on the floor near the hearth, or a corner in the loft, where mice and draft fight for dominance. Sometimes boards are laid across barrels to create makeshift sleeping platforms. Blankets. You bring your own if you're smart. Or you sleep in your cloak and pray no one robs you in the night. You lie down now in your cramped corner of an inn's sleeping loft. Someone is snoring beside you loudly. Someone else smells strongly of onions and horse. You try to turn away, but there's nowhere to go. Every inch is taken. Still, your body eventually yields. Fatigue wins. You fall asleep to the sound of distant laughter, creaking floorboards, and a low hum of life continuing downstairs. And what of those who have no bed? The truly poor, the rootless, the wanderers. For them, sleep happens wherever it must, in barns, under bridges, in church porches. A bundle of rags becomes a pillow. A cloak becomes a blanket. If you're lucky, you find shelter. If you're not, you sleep with one eye open, afraid of thieves, rats, or the cold. You might crawl into a hayloft, pressing yourself deep into the warmest spot you can find. The hay rustles with every breath. Somewhere below, a cow shifts in her stall. It's warmer here than on the road, and for a moment, it almost feels safe. In every class, in every region, in every corner of medieval life, beds exist in some form. They may be grand, humble, temporary, or symbolic, but they're always meaningful and always imperfect. There are no memory foams or electric blankets here. Just wood straw rope and the slow shaping of a space where you can close your eyes. Tonight, as the sun sets once more, and you return to whatever version of a bed you've imagined for yourself in this journey, be it noble, monastic, or makeshift, you carry with you the understanding that beds weren't just about rest. They were about place, your place in the world, your access to comfort, privacy, peace, or your lack of it. You pull the blanket over your shoulder and exhale. Somewhere in the distance, bells toll again. A dog barks, the fire dims, and your medieval bed, whatever shape it takes, is waiting for you. There's more to uncover. We haven't even touched on travel beds, marriage beds in noble alliances, or the rituals of preparing a deathbed, but all in time. For now, sleep in your corner of the past and listen to the silence settle in around you. You wake to a gray light spilling into the room, filtered soft, almost weightless. The fire's gone out completely. The air is cold against your cheeks. You stretch beneath your blanket, that familiar ache settling in your shoulders and hips. The ropes beneath your mattress sag a little more than they did yesterday. You make a mental note tonight. You'll have to tighten them again, or risk rolling into the dip that's forming near the middle. Another day begins, and the bed you just left becomes invisible to you in the rhythm of chores, prayers, and tasks. But tonight, it'll be waiting just as it always is. And tonight, we're going to explore something a little more personal, something quieter, and maybe even a little tender, what it meant to prepare the bed in medieval times. You might not expect it, but even in a world without washing machines or fabric softener, bed-making was a deliberate ritual. Whether you were a peasant woman fluffing the straw in your family's pallet, or a lady's maid folding the fine linens of a noble's featherbed, the act of preparing a bed was layered with care, repetition, and meaning. Let's begin with the simplest form, the peasant's nightly routine. As dusk approaches, you gather fresh straw or dried rushes from a bundle tucked near the hearth. The old straw from the mattress is turned or replaced altogether if it's too matted or moldy. You reach into a cloth pouch and pull out a handful of dried herbs, lavender if you're lucky, or pennyroyal, maybe thyme. These are mixed into the straw not for scent alone, but to repel pests, fleas, lice, and mites that made nightly visits without invitation. You beat the mattress with a stick to fluff it. You turn the sack over, evening out the lumps. The ropes that support it underneath are checked, tugged, and tightened with a bed key. You've done this 100 times. You'll do it 100 more. It's not glamour, it's survival. Next comes the blanket. It's heavy, scratchy, patched in places, but it's yours. You shake it out by the fire's edge to warm it just slightly. Then you lay it back down across the bed with care. Maybe you fold a second one at the foot, just in case the night turns colder than expected. And if you're fortunate enough to have a linen sheet smooth and fine, worn thin from washing, you lay it carefully across the straw. Not every home can afford linen. Some make do with sacking or simply sleep between wool layers. But if you do have linen, you treasure it. Wash day becomes a major event, and bed sheets are scrubbed by hand in basins of ash soap and cold water, then hung to dry on ropes strung from cottage beams. Now imagine the scene in a noblewoman's chamber. Her bed is a stage of elegance, and its daily preparation is a duty of rank. Servants enter in the late afternoon to air the mattress, lifting layers of linen, and feather-smoothing creases, plumping bolsters. The curtains are shaken out to free them from dust. Everything smells faintly of starched lavender and old wood. Linen is starched and pressed with heated stones wrapped in cloth. Fine coverlets are embroidered sometimes with religious symbols, family crests, or stylized florals. Some noblewomen own multiple sets, each designated for different seasons. In summer, lighter linen sheets. In winter, heavier woolen ones, perhaps fur-trimmed for warmth. The bed might be turned down in preparation for sleep. A low stool is set nearby. A jug of warm water is left on a nearby washstand. A servant might heat a warming pan in the hearth, filling it with embers and sliding it between the sheets to drive out the night's chill. You lie there now imagining it, the sudden warmth meeting the cool fabric, the gentle hiss of heat sinking into cloth. Then come the gestures that are almost sacred. A quick prayer whispered as you fold back the top layer. The sign of the cross made before climbing in. Maybe a token left beneath the pillow. A locket, a ring, a dried flower, or a charm against nightmares. It may seem simple, but these were small acts of control in a world full of uncertainty. In some homes, there's even a bed blessing a specific prayer recited to keep spirits at bay during the night. People feared the darkness, the vulnerability of sleep. Protecting the bed with ritual made sense. The bed, after all, was where you were closest to death, and possibly closest to God. You pull the curtain now, and lie back against the feathered bolster. The bed creaks beneath you. The warmth from the fire lingers faintly in the mattress. You feel the faint smell of herbs rising up from beneath the sheet, and you inhale deeply. You're safe. Or at least you've tried to make yourself safe. That's what all of this is, the daily layering of effort against the chaos of the night. And as your body sinks into the same impressions it made last night, hips fitting into the same sag arms, curling into the same pillow, you feel the ritual settle into you. The repetition, the rhythm. You understand why people cared about this space so deeply. The bed was more than just where you ended your day. It was where you prepared to survive it. Whether you lived in a timber-framed cottage, a stone manor, or the top floor of a bustling inn, the act of making the bed, however crude or refined, was an assertion of dignity, of structure, of hope that tomorrow would come. And tonight it will. You feel it in the warmth beneath your blanket, in the soft hush of breath from those around you, in the faint murmur of wind outside the shutter. There's still much more to uncover. We haven't yet explored how beds moved with you when you traveled, or how they transformed for weddings and deaths. But that can wait. For now, your bed is made. The straw is fluffed. The linens are straight. The fire has faded to a dull glow. And you are ready to sleep. Darkness comes again, slow and gentle, like a woolen shroud being pulled over the world. You're lying in bed, where else beneath a blanket smoothed by your own hands, the straw beneath you slightly less lumpy than it was the night before. It's not perfect. It never is. But you've prepared it with care. And in the medieval world, that makes all the difference. Tonight, we're going to follow the bed as it travels. Because in this time when horses are more reliable than roads, and inns are few and far between, people on the move often bring their beds with them. Not the full frame, of course, but the essential parts. The bedding, the comfort, the familiarity. Let's imagine you're a member of the nobility setting off on pilgrimage or summoned to court. Your servants pack more than clothing, and coin they pack your bed. Rolled mattresses, folded linens, woolen blankets, a personal pillow. All of it is bundled tightly and stowed onto pack animals or into carts protected against the damp with waxed cloth. When you arrive at your destination, an inn, a manor, or perhaps a guest chamber at a monastery, the first order of business isn't food, it's making the bed. Your servants unroll your mattress, beat it into shape, lay out the familiar linen, and arrange your bolster just so. They hang your personal curtain set, if the room has hooks. They tuck in your own herbal sachets under the pillow. Why? Because the bed is your only constant. It's the one soft echo of home even in a world full of unfamiliar stone walls and drafty halls. This mobile bed is a privilege. The poor, by contrast, sleep wherever they can. A pile of hay in a stable, the dirt floor of a barn, the pew of a kindly church. For them, the concept of a portable bed is beyond luxury, it's magic. But even those with some means, like traveling merchants or tradesmen, might bring bedrolls, thick cloth wraps stuffed with straw or wool rolled tight and tied with leather cords. They unroll these onto floors, onto benches, even onto bare earth if necessary. A traveling bed might be nothing more than a blanket and a hope for warmth. And yet it is a bed because it marks a boundary, a small claim staked against the night. You lie back now, imagining it. You're in a candlelit room above a bustling street in Bruges or Florence. You hear the murmur of voices through the thin walls, the clatter of hooves on cobblestones below. But your bed, the same bundle you slept on last week in Calais, and the week before in Rouen, is familiar beneath you. You can smell the rosemary in the seams of your pillow. You can feel the softness of your own linen against your cheek. This is your space, even if the walls around it change. And beds weren't just packed for journeys, they were sent ahead for major life events. Take weddings, for example. When a noblewoman was married, she often brought a bed as part of her dowry. Not just the mattress or linens, but sometimes the entire frame, carved, marked, and blessed. The bed was both gift and symbol, a place where the marriage would begin, and where, ideally, a lineage would follow. Imagine the procession servants bearing bedding through city streets, watched by neighbors and courtiers, signaling a new alliance not just of people, but of families and fortunes. At the bride's new home, her chamber is prepared in advance. The bed, freshly assembled and covered in her own linens, awaits her. The chamber is decorated with flowers, holy symbols, and perhaps even tokens from her mother's household, small reminders that she is not entirely alone in this strange new place. That bed is where her married life will begin. It may also be the very bed where her children will be born. And then there are royal beds. Entire palaces were sometimes organized around them. Kings and queens had state beds, enormous, elevated, often gilded and embroidered, meant for display as much as sleep. These were moved with them when they traveled. The bed was part of their presence, a material symbol of their body and authority. To be invited to witness the royal bedchamber, even without the monarch in it, was a privilege. To sit beside it, an honor. To sleep in it, that was reserved for no one. You shift in your imagined bedding, drawing the covers higher. The idea of carrying your bed with you, of arriving and knowing you'll sleep in something familiar, is comforting. The thought that people did this again and again, across vast distances and dangerous roads, is even more so. Because it tells you something crucial, no matter how far you roam, the longing for a safe, warm, familiar place to lie down never leaves us. Even soldiers carried versions of their beds. A cloak wrapped tightly around straw rolled up beside a shield. A bundle of woolen cloth kept dry beneath a saddle. Makeshift, yes, but never random. There was always intent in how one slept, even in wartime. Even when rest came in stolen hours between marches. Because here's the truth of it, in a world without security, the bed was your border. It said, "This is mine. This is where I stop, where the night stops, where fear stops, even just for a few hours." So tonight, as you lie there swaddled in imaginary linens, surrounded by the shifting scents of hay and lavender and dust, you can feel it. The centuries of hands smoothing sheets, fluffing straw, tucking in corners. The small, loving acts of preparing a place to rest. Whether in castles, cottages, or roadside inns, the gesture was the same: build a bed however you can. Then crawl into it and hope the night is kind. And you've traveled far already, but the best part, your bed is always with you now, wherever your imagination takes you. More secrets wait. But for tonight, just rest in the knowledge that even in motion, the medieval bed never stopped being a place of refuge. The chill of midnight still clings to the air. You're lying still, half awake, the familiar weight of the blanket pressing against your chest. Somewhere nearby, a shutter groans in the wind. A floorboard creaks under a mouse's tiny feet. The fire has long since given up its final ember. You pull the covers tighter, your fingers brushing the coarseness of the wool, and your thoughts drift not forward this time, but downward. Because tonight we descend into the quiet and sometimes unsettling world of the deathbed. You might not like to think about it, but in the medieval world, death was not a stranger. It visited often, and it visited in bed. In fact, your bed, the very place where you slept, dreamed, made love, gave birth, was almost always the place where you met your end. And so it became something more than furniture. It became sacred ground. Let's begin in a peasant cottage. The room is dim, a faint trace of smoke curling up from the hearth. Someone lies in bed, an elder perhaps, or a parent breathing shallowly beneath a worn blanket. Their skin is pale. Their hands tremble slightly. Around them, the family gathers, quiet but close. There are no hospitals to run to, no nurses in starched white. Just this space, this bed, and these people. Sometimes a priest is called. He kneels by the bed, murmuring prayers in Latin, his voice low and steady. Holy water is sprinkled on the sheets. A crucifix is placed in the dying person's hand. They confess their sins if they can speak. If not, their family confesses for them. The ritual is slow, intimate, final. The bed becomes an altar. The mattress, a threshold between this world and whatever comes next. And when the moment arrives, when breath slows, when eyes close, when stillness settles, it's in that bed that the soul is believed to depart. It's in that same straw-filled sack where they once laid their child, where they whispered stories in the dark, where they curled for warmth after a long day in the fields. The deathbed isn't just a physical place. It's a narrative space. Family stories end there. Inheritance begins there. The turning of generations happens there. Now let's walk quietly into a noble chamber. The air is heavy with incense. The room is hushed, darkened despite the hour. The Lord lies in his grand four-poster bed, a fur-lined coverlet pulled up to his chest. Servants wait in the corners. A priest stands ready with the sacraments. And just outside the curtain, airs whisper urgently, weighing futures. The bed is high-carved and old, passed down through centuries. It has seen marriages, childbirths, and now the slow passage of its master. The man in the bed might be dictating his will, naming who will inherit his land, his armor, his horses, maybe even the bed itself. These aren't just assets, they're identity. To give away your bed is to give away your legacy. And after he dies, the bed is stripped. The linens are washed or sometimes burned. The mattress may be restuffed, the curtains re-dyed. Or perhaps in grief, the family removes the bed entirely, sending it away so no one else needs sleep where death once lingered. But more often, the bed remains, because in the medieval world, memory is held in fabric and frame. That bed, its creaks, its carvings, its scent, is now imbued with the passing of a life. Children grow up hearing stories of who died there. Guests are told to sleep well, even as they lie beneath the same canopy that once shrouded a final breath. The bed becomes a character in the household, a witness to time, to endings. Not all deathbeds were solemn, though. Some were dramatic. A knight might perish from wounds suffered in battle, carried home and laid in bed by torchlight. A child might fade in sleep, never waking. A mother might pass just hours after giving birth, her baby tucked into the same bedding she warmed. Tragedy and tenderness wove together in the linen threads forever bound. And what of those who died without a bed, the homeless, the exiled, the outcast? For them death came in the cold in the straw of a stable, or curled against a stone wall. And yet even they would be imagined later by those who mourned as having had a deathbed. Because it was important to picture someone lying down to die. To believe they had one final moment of stillness, even if the world denied it. You shift in your own bed now, aware of how much has happened in these medieval beds, how much love, pain, comfort, and grief. Your mattress groans faintly under your weight. You run a hand along the cloth beside you, imagining all the stories that might live in the fabric. And maybe, just maybe, that's why the bed held such reverence. It wasn't about how soft it was or how high it stood. It was about the role it played in the cycle of human life. It was the last witness, the last embrace. And so in homes across the centuries, people took care of their beds, not just for sleep, but for what it might one day hold. A final goodbye, a whispered prayer, a hand held tight until the last moment. But tonight, you're still here, still breathing, still dreaming. And that same bed, it's not your deathbed yet. It's still your refuge. You wake in the quiet grayness before dawn, the kind of stillness that hums just below hearing. Your breath curls softly in the chill air, and for a moment, you lie perfectly still beneath the blankets, the straw mattress creaking faintly beneath your weight. The medieval bed has become so familiar now that it's hard to imagine beginning or ending your day anywhere else. But while we've spoken of the birth bed, the death bed, the marriage bed, and even the traveling bed, there's one more variation we haven't yet explored, the ceremonial bed. Because not every moment in a bed was private, not in the medieval world. Some were public, deliberate, staged for all to see. Let's begin with lying in state. Picture a nobleman or royal who has just died. His body is not buried immediately. Instead, it's carefully washed, clothed in finery, and placed in bed, his own bed, surrounded by candles, family, and members of his household. Visitors file in silently to pay respects, crossing themselves as they pass the figure laid out under stiff, luxurious covers. The curtains are pulled wide. The chamber is heavy with incense. The air is still and reverent. Here the bed becomes a stage, a final tableau of dignity. Even in death, the body is framed as if sleeping peacefully wrapped in its familiar bedding beneath the same canopy where life once unfolded. Now shift scenes. It's a royal wedding, and the bedchamber is full of murmuring courtiers, perfumed air, and gleaming candlelight. The bedding ceremony is about to take place. This strange ritual, part celebration, part theater, marks the transition from public vows to private union. Guests, often family and close companions, gather in the bridal chamber to witness the bride and groom being led to the bed. Sometimes they're even tucked in by elders or priests with laughter and teasing. Curtains may be drawn dramatically, toasts made, jokes whispered, and then the room is cleared slowly, respectfully, until the couple is finally left alone. It's both deeply intimate and absurdly public. The bed is no longer just for rest. It is now the setting of expectation, continuation, and spectacle. But it wasn't just nobles who engaged in such rituals. In some peasant communities after childbirth, a woman would go through a process called churching, where she was blessed and welcomed back into society. Before this, however, she would observe a lying-in period, staying in bed for weeks after giving birth. Friends and family would visit her there, bringing food, herbs, and conversation. It was part recovery, part community tradition. The bed became a maternal throne, a sacred boundary where life was sheltered and honored. You can almost feel it now, the warmth of others seated nearby, the laughter of women kneeling by the bedside, the scent of soup and sage thick in the air. This wasn't a lonely place. This was where life paused to honor the change that had just happened. Even legal transactions on occasion happened from the bed. Infirm nobles dictated their wills from between their sheets, witnessed by scribes and heirs. The bed again became a kind of pulpit. If you were too weak to rise, the world came to you. And what was said in bed often carried weight, more solemn, more final, more meaningful. In fact, this symbolic power was so strong that medieval artists often depicted saints, prophets, or kings in bed, surrounded by others offering wisdom, blessing, or judgment. The image was clear: the bed was not a place of weakness, but of revelation. You turn your head against the pillow, now imagining those beds grand and golden, or humble and handmade. Beds that were seen by dozens, even hundreds, that bore witness to vows and tears and ceremonies that echoed through generations. Even in the quiet corners of peasant homes, some beds took on ceremonial status. A family bed might be passed down from one generation to the next. The carved frame, rough from years of use, became a living timeline. Children were conceived there. Grandparents died there. Quilts made by hand were tucked over new babies in the same corners they themselves had once been rocked. This wasn't furniture. This was family, memory, tradition. And it held everything with quiet grace. And what about the absence of a bed that, too, could be symbolic? To be denied a proper bed, whether through exile, poverty, or disgrace, was to be stripped of one's place in society. It was to sleep on straw alone, without ceremony, without comfort. To sleep without a bed was to be forgotten, or to start over from nothing. So when a person built or received their first true bed, whether a merchant couple finally affording a frame or a servant gifted one after decades of loyalty, it meant something. It was a step toward permanence, a mark of belonging. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders. You think about your own life, the beds you've known, childhood ones, hospital ones, hotel ones, the one you're in now. Every one of them has a memory, a moment, a person attached, just like the medieval ones. The ceremonial beds of the past weren't so different from what we still do today: wedding nights, hospital vigils, the hush that falls over a bedroom after a baby has been brought home for the first time. The bed, across centuries, is where the most human things happen. So tonight, as sleep calls you back beneath the covers, remember your bed is more than wood and cloth. It's your own little theater, your quiet stage. And even now it holds stories whether you realize it or not. Close your eyes. There's still more to explore. But not yet. For now, you're where you need to be. You've drifted far now, deeper into sleep, deeper into centuries of memory and cloth. The medieval bed surrounds you like a cocoon, the ropes beneath sighing faintly with every shift of your weight. The wool blanket scratches slightly against your chin. But you don't mind anymore. The roughness is familiar now, grounding. It's astonishing, really, how something so simple, straw wood linen, can begin to feel like home. Tonight we leave the grand rituals and solemn ceremonies behind. Tonight, we peek into something much quieter, the ordinary bedtime rituals of everyday medieval life. Because even the most unremarkable routines done by candlelight, whispered in the dark, can tell us everything about who people were and what they valued. Let's start with the fire. In nearly every home, noble or poor, someone tends to it before bed. You sit by the hearth, poking at the embers, feeding in one last chunk of wood. Not to keep the room warm, it won't last the night, but to ensure a flicker of heat remains come morning. Then you rake the ashes over the glow, blanketing it like a child. A smothered fire means safety. No flames, no sparks, no accidents while you sleep. Next comes the washing. You dip your hands into a basin of cool water. There's no soap, not really, just a bit of ash or maybe herbs steeped earlier in the day. You rinse your face, maybe your feet. It's not luxurious. It's necessary. Clean skin means fewer fleas, fewer bites, fewer itches in the night. A small towel hangs nearby, hand-woven, slightly damp from earlier use. If you're in a wealthier home, a servant does this for you. A ewer is poured. Your feet are dried and powdered, maybe even perfumed if the occasion calls for it. But even then, there's humility in the gesture. Everyone is tired. Everyone wants to retreat into the softness of sleep. Now the chamber is dimming. A few candles flicker in their holders, beeswax if you're rich, tallow if you're not. The smell of smoke and animal fat clings to the air. You snuff most of the lights, leaving only one small taper by your bedside. You check the bed ropes again, give a tug, a twist of the key, and listen to the slight groan of the frame tightening beneath you. Then you settle the bedding. If you're alone, it's simple. Fold back the top layer fluff, your bolster climb in. If you're with someone, spouse, child, friend, you do a quiet little dance, who gets which side, who holds the blanket, who turns toward the wall. You lie down, you settle, you exhale. But before sleep, there's prayer. Always prayer. In the simplest cottages, it might be just a murmur, "God, keep me this night." In wealthier homes, longer phrases follow. From sudden death, from unclean spirits, from fire and storm. A cross traced on your chest. A whispered name of a loved one. A quick glance toward a relic hung near the bed. A saint's ribbon, a carved crucifix. A rosary looped over a beam. Children are taught to recite their prayers aloud, kneeling at the side of the bed, heads bowed. You picture a small voice repeating the lines over cracked hands, "Now I lay me down to sleep." Not those words exactly, but the sentiment is the same. Protect me. Hold me. Let me wake again. Then the rituals of tucking in. You pull the blanket to your chin. If it's cold, maybe you've heated a stone by the fire wrapped in cloth placed at your feet. You feel the residual warmth like a secret. It won't last long, but it'll help. Or maybe you have a bed warmer, a brass pan filled with coals swiped through the sheets before you climbed in. A luxury, but one that's earned. You turn to your side, or you lie flat, hands folded over your chest, like in the paintings. You listen. Every medieval home has its sounds. The groan of rafters, the shuffle of straw on the floor, the faint breath of animals nearby. In some cottages, you can hear the goats' slow chewing. In city homes, it might be the far-off call of night watchman bells marking the hour. And even in shared beds, crowded, cramped, imperfect, there is a rhythm. Someone snores, someone coughs, someone hums a lullaby to a restless child. You don't mind. You've learned to sleep with others close. You've learned to let the noise become comfort. But what about the beds that aren't quiet? In busy taverns, laughter still echoes from the floor below. In cities, the streets might never sleep. You're lying there, eyes open, listening to footsteps outside your window. A horse's whinny, the splash of a chamber pot being emptied. And still you're warm. Still you're safe beneath your blanket, beneath your roof, inside your bed. You pull the fabric tighter, the scent of herbs rising with the shift. You think of all the nights that came before, nights of harvest exhaustion, nights of mourning, nights of laughter muffled behind curtains. The bed has seen them all, and tomorrow you'll wake in it again. The fire will be rebuilt, the straw will be fluffed, the blanket will be folded down one more time. Because the bed, in its modest repetition, anchors you. It reminds you that no matter how chaotic the world is, no matter how loud, cold, or dangerous, there will always be this, the softness of cloth, the warmth of a body, the hush of breath. Sleep now. There's more to uncover. But tonight, the ropes are tight. The linen is smooth. The wind is fading. And your bed is ready. The night has wrapped itself fully around you now. You don't just lie in your medieval bed, you sink into it. The The straw, the wool, the lingering warmth from the day, these are no longer discomforts, but constants. They greet your body with familiarity. Each squeak of the rope, each scratch of the blanket against your skin feels like a small voice saying, "Yes, this is where you belong." Tonight, let's travel away from homes and castles and explore an often overlooked but fascinating setting, the institutional bed. Specifically beds in places like almshouses, hospitals, and convents. These weren't homes, but they weren't prisons either. They were spaces of care, of discipline, of quiet dignity. Imagine stepping into a medieval almshouse. These were charitable institutions, modest, cloistered buildings that offered a roof and a bed to the elderly poor widows or disabled men who had nowhere else to go. You walk into the dormitory rows of narrow wooden beds, each with a thin mattress and a neatly folded blanket at the foot. No curtains, no privacy. But there is order, cleanliness, silence. Your bed here is not your own, it's a gift. A sign that someone somewhere saw your need and answered it. The mattress is filled with straw, maybe some wool, if the house is well endowed. A wooden chest sits beside it where you can keep your few belongings. You are expected to make your bed each morning. Fold the blanket, beat the straw, smooth the linen. This small act becomes a ritual of self-respect. Even with nothing, you preserve dignity. Nearby, you hear others settling in. A man wheezes softly in the dark. A woman whispers a prayer. No one speaks loudly. This isn't a place of merriment. It's a resting point at the end of a long life. Hospitals in the Middle Ages were more like hostels than the surgical clinics we imagine today. They offered a place to die in peace, to recover from fevers, or simply to be cared for when no family remained. You walk through one now. The air is thick with the smell of vinegar, herbs, and bodies. Beds are lined up along the walls, low and simple, each one filled with someone groaning, or sleeping, or murmuring to unseen spirits. You lie down in one of these hospital beds. The sheets are rough but clean. The mattress is thinner than you'd like, and it crackles slightly when you shift. Someone leaves a small wooden bowl of broth beside you, along with a cloth to wipe your face. The sisters move quietly through the ward, adjusting blankets, whispering psalms. You're not alone here, but you're not at home either. And yet this bed offers something essential: rest without fear. A pause, a kindness, a final comfort for those who've had too little of it in their lives. Now let's step into the cloister of a convent. You're a novice nun just arrived. You've renounced the world and taken your vows. Your bed is as bare as it gets: a wooden board, a coarse pad, a woolen coverlet. You sleep in your habit, your hands folded in prayer. There are no frills, no decorations. Even your dreams are meant to be plain. You lie facing the wall. Your sister in Christ lies beside you, not touching. All around, the others breathe evenly, their lives moving in perfect rhythm. Your bed is one of many in a shared dormitory, each one aligned precisely, each blanket tucked to the same length. This is not about comfort. It's about discipline, control, stillness. And yet, oddly, it brings peace. You are no longer an individual struggling through the chaos of the world. You are part of a larger body. The bed is your station. And every night when the final prayer is spoken and the candles are extinguished, you return to it like a bird returning to its perch. You know where you belong. Even in prisons, beds were part of the story. Perhaps just a straw mat on the stone floor. Perhaps a wooden slab chained to the wall. Still, it was a bed. Still, the prisoner would lie down, think, wait, hope. Even the condemned were often given a bed the night before execution, and if nothing else, that bed was their last possession. You turn now your own imagined bed creaking softly. You pull the blanket to your chin and listen not to kings or children or lovers tonight, but to the quiet hum of all those whose beds were given to them, not chosen. Beds offered out of charity, out of devotion, out of mercy. These institutional beds weren't filled with softness or dreams. They were filled with purpose. They represented survival, a system, a promise that someone somewhere thought rest was a right even for the forgotten. As you breathe deeply now, you feel your own mattress cradling you imperfectly but faithfully. And in the dark, the line between home and hospice, between palace and convent, begins to blur. Because no matter where the bed stands, between crumbling walls or beside a painted altar, it holds the same truth. Here you can lie down. Here you can let go. Sleep now in your place, in your station, in your stillness. Tomorrow we'll explore the language of beds, the phrases, idioms, and metaphors born from these centuries of rest. But tonight, rest like one of them. The poor, the tired, the prayed for. The night has deepened into its quietest hour. Everything beyond your bed feels distant, now hushed, softened, erased by darkness. You shift gently, hearing the soft whisper of linen against linen. The rope frame beneath you gives a low groan in response, as if remembering every sleeper who came before. And tonight, instead of wandering through places or people, we turn our attention inward towards something you've heard 100 times, without ever noticing the language of beds. Because even in the Middle Ages, the bed didn't just live in wood and straw. It lived in words, in the stories people told, in the phrases they muttered, in the metaphors they carried from one generation to the next. Start with the basics. The very word bed in Middle English beda meant more than a frame or a mattress. It meant a location, a place for something to grow, to rest, to begin. That's why we still say flower bed, or bed of nails, or deathbed. The word itself holds paradox, comfort, and danger, softness, and finality. A place to lie still, or to lie forever. In medieval prayers and lullabies, beds often took on a poetic quality. A child's cradle was called a blessing bed, the marital bed a covenant place, and the deathbed that was the passing board. Think of it, even the plank beneath you was more than just wood. It was a threshold, a bridge. Language wrapped itself around the bed like a second blanket. Consider the idioms that survive even now. To make one's bed and lie in it, a phrase of responsibility. Medieval in spirit, if not exact origin. The idea that your choices, who you married, what you said, how you lived, would shape your final rest. Or how about bed of roses, a phrase that's been around in spirit since troubadour songs, contrasting the ideal bed of love and perfume with the reality of straw and stiff joints. There were darker turns of phrase, too. To be called from one's bed could mean death, especially if the bells rang late at night. To die in one's bed was considered the most blessed form of passing. Peaceful, surrounded by family, with time to repent. It was what kings hoped for, what peasants prayed for. Not the battlefield, not the road, but home. And then there were the euphemisms. In courtly tales and bawdy ballads alike, people spoke of sharing a pillow, warming the sheets, or entering the curtains. These weren't just poetic, they were necessary. Love and sex lived in the bed, but society required discretion, so people cloaked it in metaphor. Even in legal texts, you'll find phrases like lay with intent or took to bed, used to describe everything from scandal to consummation. You smile now, thinking of how universal it is, how we still do this. Tied to the bed. Bedridden. Bed rest. Bedroom eyes. The bed is a constant in our language, shaping the way we speak about health, desire, power, comfort, and endings. And in the medieval world, storytelling was full of beds. Knights dreamed of holy visions in beds. Saints were tempted in beds. Prophecies came in dreams woven into the linen of a well-made bed. A story might begin with someone rising from bed at dawn, or end with someone never rising again. Even dreams themselves were sometimes called bed thoughts. The things you feared, wished, or regretted most often came not by daylight, but in those quiet hours when the straw crinkled beneath you and the fire faded low. You shift again, curling your legs under the blanket, and let yourself imagine the countless conversations that happened between sheets and under canopies. The whispered confessions, the secret plans, the pillow talk of history, kings giving orders from their pillows, wives plotting escape, children asking impossible questions in the dark. There's something eternal in that. The bed in all its versions has always been a storyteller. It absorbs everything. The laughter, the illness, the love, the silence, and the words it collects. They pass down like heirlooms, carved in headboards, stitched into coverlets, spoken into the air one final time. So tonight, as you listen to the last of the wind tapping against the shutter, think of the words you've laid into your own bed, what you've whispered into your pillow, what you've feared or hoped just before sleep. The bed remembers. That's its oldest magic. And tomorrow, we'll step back into the sunlight. We'll follow what happens when the bed is left behind, when its pieces are repurposed, its frame abandoned, its linens folded for the last time. But that's another night's tale. For now, your own bed thoughts are starting to stir. Let them. Drift with them. The words can wait. Sleep now with silence resting beside you like another blanket. The air is still tonight. Even the house seems to be holding its breath. No wind brushes the shutters. No footsteps echo outside. Just the soft ticking of time against the beams above and the hush of linen shifting with your breath. You're still nestled deep in your imagined medieval bed, and tonight we come to a gentle melancholy, the afterlife of a bed. Because what happens when a bed is no longer needed? You've seen this bed through everything now: birth, sickness, travel, marriage, death, prayer, routine. But in the medieval world, a bed didn't disappear with its owner. It continued. It was too valuable not to, too heavy with meaning to simply discard. Let's begin with the wills. In medieval inventories and testaments, beds were named itemized with care and pride. One feather bed with bolster and curtains of green wool. A rope bed with mattress and 2 pairs of linen sheets. A child's cradle bed carved with birds. They weren't just possessions. They were legacy. A noblewoman might pass her bed on to her daughter, part of her dowry, or her final gift. A merchant might leave his to a loyal apprentice. Even peasants, when they could mention beds in their modest wills. It meant something to give a bed. It meant you had built a life solid enough to rest on. Imagine the room after someone dies. The family moves through it slowly. The bed is stripped, each layer folded and set aside. Sheets washed or burned depending on the illness. The mattress lifted, straw shaken out. The frame dusted, polished, turned to the wall, or not. Maybe it's left exactly as it was for days, or weeks. No one wants to sleep in it yet. The impression of the body is still there. You can see where they last lay. Eventually, someone does sleep in it again. Because life moves forward. Someone marries or grows up or comes home from traveling. The bed, without asking, takes a new story onto its wooden shoulders. Sometimes it's not passed down, it's sold. Beds were expensive. A good rope bed frame could bring in coin. The buyer might not know whose breath once warmed the bolster. They might not care. But the bed remembers. And if it's not kept or sold, then it's broken down. The ropes are repurposed for other furniture. The wood becomes firewood or beams in a barn. The linen is cut into bandages or baby wraps or dishcloths. In the medieval world, nothing is wasted. Even a bed has its afterlife. Even when it no longer holds a body, it can hold water, grain, cloth, warmth. But occasionally, in the rarest cases, a bed becomes something sacred. The deathbed of a saint might be preserved, kept as a relic, visited by pilgrims, honored in hushed tones. A holy woman's straw mattress, flattened by years of prayer, might be said to cure fevers or bring visions. Fragments of cloth taken from her bedding might be sewn into amulets or hidden in the walls of a chapel. The bed in this way becomes eternal. And then there are beds that vanish, forgotten in abandoned homes, lost to fire, left behind in war. The linens rot, the wood splits, the straw is eaten by mice. No names, no legacies, no heirs, just the ghost of sleep where a bed once stood. But even that is a kind of story. You turn now slowly in your own bed, the imaginary one you've carried across these nights. You think about the beds in your own life. The childhood one, perhaps. The narrow dormitory bunk. The guest room mattress that squeaked like a door hinge. The one that held someone you loved before they were gone. Beds hold us, but they also outlive us. And that's what makes them remarkable. They are not just shaped by bodies, they shape memory. They create it. And long after we're gone, someone else will pull back that blanket, fluff that pillow, lie down, without knowing the stories written in every thread. You're part of that now. Your breath is part of the linen. Your weight is in the frame. Your quiet dreams, tonight's and every night's, sink deeper than you think. So as we near the end of this journey, let your thoughts linger a little longer in the folds of cloth, the creak of wood, the rhythm of a mattress that will someday belong to someone else. You're still here. The bed is still holding you. And for now, that's enough. The world outside your bed has faded completely now. There's no wind, no voices, just the sound of your own breath, steady and slow, rising beneath a blanket that's heavier with memory than with wool. You lie there in your medieval bed, rope-bound, straw-stuffed, imperfect, and you feel it all. The age of it. The weight of all those centuries layered like sheets. Tonight we come to the final chapter in this long, quiet journey. One last look at the bed, not as object, not as symbol, but as experience, as the thing your body knows without needing to speak. You shift gently. The rope beneath the mattress creaks again, a sound you've come to know well. A familiar groan like an old friend clearing its throat. The straw inside the mattress rustles softly, packed unevenly after weeks of use. You know exactly where the dip is. You curl into it instinctively, the way a body shapes itself to comfort. It didn't design, but has long since accepted. This is your sleep, not luxurious, not indulgent, but honest. And the longer you lie here, the more you realize the medieval bed wasn't about comfort in the modern sense. It was about endurance. It was a space carved out of a harsh world. A space where you didn't have to stand, didn't have to labor, didn't have to speak. a pause. The materials are modest. A frame of pine or elm bound with rope. A sack of straw perhaps mixed with herbs to keep the insects at bay. A blanket woven by hand. A bolster filled with feathers if you're lucky. But what makes it a bed, what makes it matter, is the human body lying on it. Yours. Now, you pull the blanket tighter. Your feet tuck into the corner. You hear the faint breath of someone else nearby, another sleeper, perhaps, or just the memory of one. Because medieval beds were rarely solitary, and even now the sensation of shared sleep lingers around you like a second cover. You feel the roughness of the linen, the cool dampness where your breath has settled, the soft thrum of your heart against the mattress. And it's in these tiny details that the truth of medieval life lives, not in battlefields or cathedrals or grand feasts, but here, in this space, in this nightly surrender to stillness. You think back on everything this bed has held, a woman in labor, biting a cloth as contractions roll through her body, a fevered child tossing beneath a damp sheet while her mother wipes her brow, two lovers whispering in the dark, hearts racing, legs tangled beneath the same coarse blanket, a dying man drawing his last breath surrounded by prayer and candlelight, a monk waking before dawn folding his wool blanket, with precision rising without a word. And somewhere in all that you stretched across centuries lying still in the same shape as they did. The bed didn't change. The silence didn't change. Only the bodies came and went like dreams. You're part of that dream now. A soft breath in a long history of sleepers. Tomorrow you'll rise from this bed as they did. You'll fold the blanket back. You'll feel the soreness in your shoulders, the imprint of the rope beneath the straw. You'll throw open the shutters and let the cold light in, but not yet. Not while the bed still holds you. Not while the story still lingers. Because this isn't just about medieval beds anymore. It's about what it means to rest. To let the world pause. To sink into something ancient and humble and real. So lie there, just a little longer. Let the straw cradle your spine. Let the linen cool your skin. Let the rhythm of sleep carry you back through time to 1,000 nights just like this one. And truly know that this bed, simple as it may be, is everything you need. And now, as the last threads of this long journey loosen and fade, your body is already floating in that warm blur between thought and dream. You've been carried through fire-warmed cottages, through the cold stone of castles, through the humble hush of convents, and the whispering corners of roadside inns. You've touched linen and rope, felt straw beneath your spine, and imagined the slow breath of someone sleeping just beside you. You've seen how a bed, this simple, creaky, scratchy bed, held entire lifetimes' birth and death ritual, and chaos, intimacy, and solitude. You've seen how it waited silently for the weary, how it shaped itself around bodies and breath, how it stood unchanged even as the world outside it spun forward. Now there's nothing more to know, nothing more to see. Just your own quiet breath, your weight pressing into the mattress, the soft hush of history closing in around you like a curtain. You don't need to think anymore. You've thought enough. The rope doesn't need tightening. The fire doesn't need feeding. The blanket doesn't need straightening. The night has already made its bed for you. So just lie still. Let go, let the centuries drift away. Let the dark wrap you up like a final woolen shroud. You are here in this bed in this moment, and that is all there is. No more words. No more noise. only sleep.